sorry, I should have gone. All right, Ms. Gutierrez, could you please do a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Grijalva?
Here.
Dr. Robbie?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Here.
Ms. Shaw?
Here.
Ms. Counts?
Here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we are going on to our land acknowledgement statement with Miss Jasmine Mesquita. Is she here?
Here.
Hi, Jasmine. I'm going to go ahead and read your student bio, and then if you could lead us through the land acknowledgement, we would appreciate it. Jasmine is a member of the Pascua Yaqui tribe. She assists her family by watching her 4 younger siblings. Jasmine learned more about her culture and took the Yaqui class at Choya High School. Jasmine is in 12th grade at Choya High School. So welcome, Jasmine. If you could go ahead and read that for us.
On behalf of the Governing Board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Jasmine Valenzuela Mesquita, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tana Atam Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pascua Yaqui tribe.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance by student Emma Mendoza. Is Miss Emma Mendoza here?
Yes.
Hi, Emma. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And after I read your bio, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, so Emma Mendoza is a 3rd grader at Tusd Elementary School. She is a scientist. She loves doing experiments and learning about extreme weather. Emma enjoys playing all sports, especially softball. Most recently, she started riding horses, and she loves it. She just got back from San Diego, where she couldn't get enough of the Pacific Ocean. That sounds awesome. Well, we're happy you're back, and you're here with us tonight. So go ahead, Emma, and please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Emma. We really appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Okay, Dr. Trujillo, do we have any agenda adjustments?
Board President Counts, we have no agenda adjustments recommended this evening.
Okay, Dr. Trujillo, awards and recognitions.
Yes, I'll go ahead and turn it over to my friend Jean to bring our presentation up and get started this evening.
I'm sorry, Dr. Trujillo, the screen is frozen. Please give me a moment.
That's okay. All right. Well, welcome back, Tucson Unified Community. It's a pleasure to have everybody online. A pleasure to see everybody again. And we're getting ready to kick off our board meeting with all of the great achievements of our students and staff here in the Tucson Unified Community. We're going to start with our first recognition, the Desert Museum Earth Day Poetry Contest, and some accolades garnered by students from Monzo and Roskridge. Congratulations to Monzo and White Elementary for being selected as finalists for the 2021 Living River of Words youth poetry and art contest. The wonder of our local waterways and wild places through the eyes of these talented young poets, photographers, and artists has been absolutely amazing and inspiring. Their work is currently being displayed at the Wheeler Taft Abbott Senior Library until July 28, 2021. Go ahead and check it out. Congratulations. Next slide. We have some award-winning teachers who have been the recipients of the Noyce Borderlands Master Teacher Fellowship. So let us issue some congratulations to Charles Collingwood and Benjamin Davis from Saguaro High School for being named Noyce Borderlands Master Teacher Fellows. The National Science Foundation and the Borderlands Education Center sponsor this wonderful program. 13 Southern Arizona STEM teachers will take part in a 5-year teacher leadership training program. Congratulations again. Got some outstanding Saguaro Cougars representing Tucson Unified in this year's edition of the Noyce Borderlands Master Teacher Fellowship Program. Our next recognition celebrates the centennial birthday of a TUSD iconic figure. Congratulations and very, very happy birthday to Dr. Laura Banks. We wish you all the best in health and happiness on your upcoming centennial birthday this June 29th. Dr. Laura Banks Reed is a former TUSD educator who worked for the district for 39 years. She served as a teacher, principal, and assistant superintendent. Dr. Banks Reed was also a district supervisor of reading and language arts during her tenure within the Tucson Unified School District and served as the principal of Cavett Elementary. The students right now, the summer school attending students of Banks Elementary, our outstanding elementary community that bears her name, is working on a happy birthday card campaign, letters personally written by our students that will be delivered to Dr. Banks and her residence in Texas, where she will be celebrating her 100-year birthday. So on behalf of the Tucson Unified community, we want to wish the legendary and iconic Dr. Banks a very, very happy and healthy 100th birthday. Our next recognition, we have the Dr. Banks Award. Congratulations to Vincent Duarte and Nairi Sedano, the 2021 Dr. Banks Award recipients. This honor is awarded to students who have attended Banks Elementary School from kindergarten through 5th grade and who exemplify the characteristics that Dr. Banks has valued and modeled throughout her life. Determined, resourceful, self-motivated, just to name a few. And to go ahead and follow up on our earlier mention of Dr. Banks' 100th birthday, in celebration of that and further celebration of her birthday, in order to support the many contributions that she has made to the district, TUSD is participating in the Eta Epsilon Omega Chapter Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated book drive to donate 100 books each to 7 Tucson Unified schools and the Dunbar Pavilion. The schools include Banks Elementary, Booth Pickett K-8, Cavett Elementary, Davis Elementary, Monzo Elementary, Mission View Elementary, Tucson High Magnet, and of course the Dunbar Pavilion. Books can be dropped off at any of the 8 locations with a note that they are for the book drive. See the posting on our TUSD Facebook page for additional details. And we have a recognition for University High School for being distinguished as a FAFSA completion school. Congratulations to UHS for being named a top FAFSA completion school. 3 selected students also received laptops. The free application for financial aid, for financial student assistance is the first step to our high school seniors realizing their college and university dream. Sadly, many students fail to take this first step and a lot of times are encountering barriers to getting financial assistance. And so thank you to University High School for coordinating this very, very important campaign to get the word out to our seniors about filling out the free application for financial student assistance. Let us recognize Keller Williams Arizona Realty's annual Red Day of Service. Thank you to the Keller Williams Arizona Realty's annual Red Day of Service, partnering with the University of Arizona's Community and School Garden Program, Keller Williams employees built a container garden in the courtyard of Utterback Middle School, working side by side with our Tucson Unified students. It's always great to see the business community partner with our schools. So thank you again to the good folks at Keller Williams Realty. Congratulations are in order for Rosalinda Rodriguez, UHS AP. She was recently named the Arizona Association for Latino Administrators and Superintendents Outstanding Administrator. Congratulations, Ms. Rodriguez was named for this prestigious award by the Arizona Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. Amongst her peers, she distinguished herself through her service to the UHS community and was selected in a very, very competitive process that involved nominated assistant principals from throughout the state. So congratulations again, Rosalinda. And finally, as summer school hits its week and a half to remain mark, I want to take this time to thank all of the teachers and staff who are supporting our 10,000 plus students in all of our summer school programs across the district. K-7 students are engaged in STEAM activities, including building and coding robots, building and launching rockets, along with art, reading, and a wide variety of high school credit recovery courses. Summer school doesn't just happen. It takes a team, and I want to thank all of our amazing teachers, our administrators, our support staff, our education support professionals, our bus drivers, our custodians, and our monitors that have successfully brought this amazing program to life for 10,000 plus students. Thank you again. And here's to a successful finish to the last week and a half of our summer school program. President Counts, that concludes the superintendent's recognitions.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Board members, do you have any reports to give, activity reports? Okay, Ms. Luna Rose.
I do, thank you, Ms. Counts. So I just wanted to add a couple of things that I have done in the district since we last met. I recently was at the Freshman Academy at Cholla High School, invited by the 21st Century Coordinator, Joy Noriega, who is also a teacher there, and Mr. Armenta, the principal. And I got to see firsthand what the Freshman Academy looks like and what the students were doing. And I was very impressed, and some of the projects they were working on seemed like, why couldn't these projects been available to me when I was getting ready to be a freshman? So kudos to Mr. Armenta and Ms. Noriega and the staff there. And it was extremely hot, so I appreciate them still giving me a tour. And I also attended the Mexican American Student Services Mexican American Parent Leadership Institute on June 16th. Just came to give a welcome to the parents, and got this lovely mask that I'm wearing, so thank you for that. And I wanted to mention really briefly, if Jeannie, you want to pull up the photo, Annie Peterson. She recently passed. She was a former journalist and editor at both the Tucson Citizen and Arizona Daily Star. But more than that, she was a parent who was really dedicated to education in the state. And she was a cheerleader of mine when I decided to run for the governing board. And her death will leave a real hole, I think, in the community. And I just wanted to give recognition to her, because without the support of her and, of course, the support of other people in my life, I don't think I'd be sitting here. She really gathered the troops for me last summer when I was getting signatures. And I just wanted to, she's also a Tucson native, went to Peter Howell in Mansfield, and she was just a really great person, and I wanted to pass my condolences to her husband Peter and her son Lars, and all the friends and family that are going to miss her dearly.
Thank you.
Ms. Counts,
Yes, Ms. Grijalva.
I thank you, Natalie. I was actually going to ask for a moment of silence because I do think that her advocacy, not just here locally, but at the state level, national level, really has made a difference for our community. And so whether you knew her personally or not, her impact is going to be, we feel it every day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Other board member activity reports?
I don't know if I think we all talked about what we were doing as far as graduation. And so I just wanted to mention that I did attend TAP, Pueblo High School, and Mary Meredith. And I'm hoping that next year we're able to set up the schedule so that we'll also be able to attend Project More. I would have been able to, except I was at my daughter's, their really cool drive-in promotion that they had at Dodge, which was really fun. And I just want to acknowledge the schools that I personally went to were Dodge and Carrillo, but every school, I saw so many pictures and shares on social media of, you know, the efforts that schools made to try to make this promotion a special time for families. And so I just want to send a big thank you. I did also, Ms. Noriega must be emailing all of us because I just actually was at Carrillo, or I'm sorry, at Choya yesterday, and that was it was really great to visit. And you know, I think it's one of the first times I've gone on a campus since, you know, for, I don't know, about 18 months. So it was good to be back on a campus.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Any other board members? Okay. Now we are moving on to call to the audience. And Ms. Shaw, would you like to take the reins?
Yes, let me pull up the document. Okay. During the audience call, the board clerk will recognize speakers and maintain order by setting appropriate limitations. The governing board is committed to the safety of the entire TUSD community in order to observe the recommended safeguards for reducing the rate of spread of COVID-19. The following procedures related to the call to the audience portion of board meetings will be observed. All public comments for the meeting were accepted in written form. Public comments will be read into the record by the program coordinator of staff services to the governing board. Our staff will make sure each board member receives a copy. At the conclusion of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if individual board members wish to respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. By law, at most, 2 board members can address any single issue raised during the call. Contents of this card are public information. And the first letter is from Susan Neal.
I'm sorry, can I start or?
Yes.
Hello, Governing Board and Council and Dr. Trujillo. I wanted to talk about the compression pay for bus drivers on the agenda. Many driving positions like Amazon is $17 to start. Also, U Express pays $25. Walmart truck drivers are $23. So you see, we in Tucson, Arizona get paid less than the rest of Arizona. In Las Cruces, New Mexico, the average pay is $29,948. Palmer, Alaska is at an average $31,000. In Texas area, Dallas average is $35,000 a year for school bus drivers. Other districts' pay are above us as of 6/8/21. Amphi is one at $16.50 for bus drivers. Also, why don't most school custodians don't have the supplies for summer that they need for the floors? Thank you, Susan Neal.
Next is Kirsten Cummins.
About 5 years ago, I was rebuffed by someone with "you're just a cataloger." It made me reflect on the many misconceptions people have regarding libraries and library professionals. I'd like to share those thoughts with you now. Libraries are the beating heart of their sites. Libraries can be used for games, puzzles, and origami, as well as homework, help, conferences, ESL courses for family members, and pop-up museums around any theme imaginable, flexible for whatever their prospective communities need or want. They bring equity to a world which has none. In a library, no one cares who your family is, nor how much they make. Libraries are diverse, multicultural community centers, not book depositories. We provide safe spaces for neurodivergent and special needs children or anyone who has ever been bullied for being different. I cannot tell you how many students have confided in me over the years because they knew I was a safe adult. A handful of middle schoolers even chose to come out to me. The amount of trust placed in me for that is immeasurable. Library professionals being renewed interest to reading. When in middle schools, I had library pets, tarantulas or lizards. Sometimes just having a creepy crawly in the library was enough to bring in a reluctant reader. We chat about Charlie the tarantula, and sometimes that student would ask for a book on spiders. When they returned, they would look for a book on snakes or some other animal, and so their delayed journey into the love of reading started. Before schools and during lunch, students would rotate on the computers, playing approved games. I'd find books for them based on those games, themes, again, drawing them into a love of reading. One February, I gift wrapped books and sponsored blind dates with books. My circulation stats went through the roof. I also had themed contests and found creative ways to pay off students, lost library book fines so that they did not associate the library with something punitive. To anyone who uses libraries, they might think that I am a librarian. According to the Library of Congress, I am. This January, I was dismayed to find out that, with my many years' experience and skills alone, I qualified for a Level 1 librarian position at our nation's library. No degree in library science is required at that level, yet the Arizona Department of Education deems me unqualified to be called a librarian at a public school because I lack both an MLIS degree and a teaching certificate. A teacher in Arizona can take a short test and get qualified librarianship, but I do not qualify. I have volunteered and been employed in libraries for some 30 years and also taught classes at schools with a certified teacher in the room. And still, I do not qualify as a librarian. Not before I entered college, Congress passed the Higher Education Amendment, 1992, creating the beginnings of today's student loan system. Like hundreds of thousands of students since, I am still paying for my first 2 degrees. You can imagine my reluctance to re-enter school for a third just so I can earn that title.
Excuse me, Ms. Peña,
Something
your
has to
time is
change.
up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next letter is from Judy Moralian.
Superintendent Trujillo, Board President Counts, Clerk Shaw, members of the board, and Mr. Ross. My name is Judy Morillion. I served as a state certified school librarian at Corbett and Gale Elementary Schools and at Sabino High School. Before my full-time position at Sabino was cut to half-time in 2003, all but the smallest elementary schools had at least one full-time school librarian and all had at least half-time library assistants. I'm speaking tonight as the lead advocate for the TUSD School Librarian Restoration Project. Our group formed in 2018 after I met with Dr. Trujillo to share our goal of restoring state-certified school librarian positions in every TUSD school. Our goal is aligned with TUSD's mission to work in partnership with parents and the community to ensure each pre-K through 12th grade student receives engaging, rigorous, and comprehensive education. For members of our advocacy group, the mission implies that all TUSD students will have equitable access to learning opportunities. TUSD students deserve literacy learning resources and tools available through school library programs. They also deserve the support of professional librarians who collaborate with classroom teachers to integrate resources and instruct students in seeking, evaluating, and using information and creating new knowledge. Research shows a correlation between the work of school librarians and improvement on students' standardized test scores, particularly in the area of reading. In their independent and co-taught lessons, librarians teach and reinforce reading comprehension strategies. This response to intervention, RTI Level 2 work addresses and lifts the reading proficiency of all students. These opportunities are not equitably offered to today's TUSD students. With only 13 certified school librarians in the district today, many students in TUSD's 86 schools are being disadvantaged. In spring 2020, the TUSD board approved 5 middle school librarian positions. Due to the pandemic and school closures, these jobs were not posted. Our advocacy group is wondering when the process of restoring school librarian positions will begin again so that the ultimate goal of literacy, learning, equity across the district can be achieved. Thank you, Judy Morellian.
Next is Amy Sonieta.
Board members, I am writing in again for the 5th time now to make masks optional in schools from the early learning centers through 12th grade. I understand that it will be spoken about during the late July board meeting, but I want you to know that we are still here fighting for our rights as parents to choose what healthcare choices are best for our kids. A choice, that's all we ask for. The research shows that thankfully children are less likely to transmit the virus, less likely to get infected if exposed, and much less likely to have a bad outcome if they do not get infected. According to data published by the CDC earlier this month, children ages 5 to 11 years were 4 times less likely to be hospitalized from COVID-19 than the flu, despite having a vaccine for the flu. We ask that you do not wait until the end of July to discuss what is going to happen for the next school year, when my kids are in school all year round. Why does TUSD continue to follow CDC recommendations that conflict with the CDC's own research? Please listen to what TUSD families want and need for their children. 3 other school districts have made masks optional. We want you to do the same and won't stop fighting until you do. I would like to thank Ms. Shaw for acknowledging us parents who feel this way and suggesting to put masks as a study session item during the last board meeting. I appreciate you hearing us. Thank you, Amy Sonieta.
Next is Amber Norris.
As a parent and a healthcare worker, as a parent and a healthcare worker who has worked this whole pandemic, I am demanding that the board make masks optional. The school board has not been going by science. You are out in positions for education and not for healthcare. Your abuse of power is over. End the mask mandates in our school. Amber Norris.
And next is Mary and Matt Ruland.
To whom it may concern, please make mask optional. Thank you, Mary and Matt Ruland.
Cindy Winston.
My name is Cindy Winston, and I am submitting a call to the audience as a member of CARE, Coalition for Accountability, Respect, and Excellence for TUSD. It has recently come to my attention that there is no staffing chart in the 2022 budget book or presentation. Since budgets are the essence of what school boards do, this is troubling. If we expect funds to be increased on behalf of students in this state, then we need to show we are responsible with the funds we actually receive. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Cindy Winston.
Next is Dawn Stevenson.
I would first like to say the schools exist because of students. You would not be in your current positions if parents did not send their children to your schools. I am grateful for my job in healthcare, and I know I would not have a job if it weren't for the patients. The patients are what keeps me employed. I think you may need to take a second look and be grateful for those children that are still enrolled in your schools. I had a conversation with a principal at one of your schools a few years ago and told her this same thing. She told me I was wrong. She said we only have schools because we have teachers. She is wrong, which tells me the outlook many teachers and staff may have. You wouldn't be employed if you did not have the enrollment numbers to support the need for your staff. As for school boards, they are there to represent the community's voice in public education. It seems like the board is only representing the faculty and staff of the schools. Remember, the public voted you in. Many, if not most faculty have been vaccinated, so you should be okay with getting back in the class. If you are vaccinated, you are protected. We are not asking to take your mask away if you want to wear it. We are asking for it to be a choice to wear. I have direct work experience with proper mask usage. If you touch your mask, you should take it off and use a new one. They also need to be cleaned daily. If you change locations, you should change your mask. I know the N95 cannot prohibit COVID from entering your system, which means your cloth mask is doing nothing to protect you. Instead of portraying the false information for masks and saving us, why aren't you promoting health? Physical education cuts have affected our students' health tremendously. In children's ages 6 to 11, 33% are overweight and 17% are obese. We know COVID is attracted to obese and overweight as well as diabetics. Wouldn't it be better to start off healthy and be able to fight off viruses and illnesses naturally? Vitamin D deficiency has also been attributed with COVID cases. Vitamin D has been an epidemic for many years, yet most physicians fail to tell you. Chances of you being deficient are great. Over 1 billion people worldwide are deficient or insufficient, yet no international health organization or governmental body has declared a health emergency to warn the public about the urgent need of achieving sufficient vitamin D blood levels. As for the ICU capacity from which some guidance were based, ICU can be a capacity at any given point throughout the year, each year, from firsthand knowledge from my work experience. We are providing guidance from skewed information. Why are we taking guidance from the CDC? The concept that the CDC represents the public good needs to be reevaluated. The CDC accepts millions in funding from corporations. This is a conflict of interest. They will not bite the hand that feeds them. Also, around February of this year, a teachers' union colluded with the CDC in regards to reopening guidelines for schools.
Excuse me, Ms. Peña, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Felicia Felix.
Dear governing board members, as a parent of a child from Gale, I would like for masks to be made optional for students. These kids have already been through so much this year, and to continue the mask mandate when all the state is lifting restrictions. Felicia Felix.
And Melissa Conroy.
Board members, I am writing again about making masks optional and allowing the parents to decide what is best for their kids for all K-12 schools. It's been stated time and time again that bacteria thrives in warm, most environments, i.e. a mask, not to mention the sweat which affects their skin and how hard it is to breathe, especially in hot temperatures. So when you are going to stop the mask requirements, we cannot wait through a summer for you to decide when no data at all supports what you are doing in the first place. Do the right thing. We are all parents wanting what is best for our children. Do the right thing for our children, the ones you were elected to represent. You continue to hide behind your virtual meetings, not wanting to face us parents in person. It's not working. We are not going to let this go until you do the right thing for our kids, the kids we entrust to your district. Melissa Conroy, mother of 2 kids in TUSD.
Next is Rachel Velasquez.
Continued forced masking of perfectly healthy young students is child abuse. You should be advocating for our youth to be unmasked. There is absolutely no reason for children in good health to wear a muzzle. Forcing children to continue this nonsense is detrimental to their mental and physical health. It has been proven that masks are unnecessary and harmful in children. Please look into this, as there are 2 sides to the science and data you continue to quote. Mentally, children are suffering at your decisions. Mask on students should be a parent's choice and definitely not up to a school board to enforce upon students in the district. My children are having a hard time daily wearing masks. It is the first thing they rip off of their face when they are picked up. You are still forcing children outside and in PE within this weather to wear a mask, and that is not right at all. If children are outside, they should completely be allowed to remove the mask. This is a danger to the children of the district. I am not and cannot be the only parent who thinks masks are a terrible thing to enforce on young, healthy children. As a board, you should be taking a survey or holding a town hall meeting. The subject of continued mask wearing has not even been on the agenda. When will this item be up for vote? I listened to all of the call to the audience. Handpicked comments were read. Shame on you, especially whoever stated we can do whatever we want. I hope every last child is withdrawn from TUSD. Rachel Velasquez.
And Lillian Fox.
There are two problems on the agenda tonight. One, it appears that the board will be asked to promote Renee Hauser from acting to Executive Director of Human Resources. She has been Director of Employment or the Acting Executive Director of HR for a total of nearly 6 years. Have you seen improvements in any part of HR during the time she's been a director in TUSD's notorious HR? After the board mistakenly approved changing the name of the temporary contract to the probationary teacher's contract, she applied the contract to not just teachers, but all counselors, nurses, and social workers with 3 or fewer years in TUSD without board approval. If HR is just the way you want it to be, promote her from acting to actual. If you believe HR has to be better, hold out for an executive director committed to improvement. 2, the second is that unlike prior budgets, no staffing chart has been provided to show you the staffing formulas and spending formulas for the schools in 2022-23. There's also no hearing for public comments and questions about the budget. You can get out your calculations and go through the over 400 pages of the budget book and try to calculate the staffing and funding formulas or discover funding for things like library books and media are purely random, with some schools getting $0 while few get thousands of dollars. Whether or not Dr. Trujillo and Ms. Weatherlist show you and the public the staffing formulas when the board approves its budget, you have approved their unowned staffing formulas. Not providing the staffing and funding formulas, they're avoiding discussion and board oversight of the budget. For example, at the last board meeting, 3 of you said you wanted to fund the libraries. He made it clear he was opposed to hiring library media specialists. Guess what? In the budget book, there are only 14 for 87 schools, 1 fewer library media specialists than before. 2 elementary and 2 K-8 schools have them. No middle schools have any. The money schools are getting for books and media ranges from $0 to thousands of dollars for a few schools. Without the staffing formulas, you have no commitment on class sizes or how the number of counselors, nurses, social workers, and monitors will be determined. Without the formulas, you can't tell what is being done to the funding for teaching supplies, medical supplies, and office supplies for schools. Lillian Fox.
And last is Liliana Orozco.
Good afternoon. My name is Liliana Orozco, and I have 2 children ages 9 and 6 who are concerned with masks for the upcoming school year. We were pleasantly happy with the opportunity to go back to in-school learning from February to May. I'm hoping and pleading that masks become optional this coming up school year. It breaks my heart to pick up my children from school and see them happy running and playing outside and see them gasping for air. This is not fair. We have other districts that have stepped up and have made masks optional, that being Marana, Vail, and Sahuarita. Please consider making the mask mandate optional. My girls suffer from frequent nosebleeds as well. They normally flare up in the summer, and wearing their mask in school have triggered it even more because wearing their mask have made it hot, then in turn have made their noses bleed. Not to mention how disgusting their masks are once they're home. I'm sure infested with germs. Please, please, I urge that you take this into consideration and make the mask optional. It's only fair to all. I appreciate your time and understanding. Sincerely, Liliana Orozco.
Thank you, Ms. Pena, and Ms. Counts, that was the last letter.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. All right, Dr. Trujillo, would you like to respond first?
Yes, I have a quite lengthy response to numerous inaccuracies to one of the calls to the audience. I'll begin with staffing ratios. On January 12th, the administration facilitated at a public governing board meeting an extensive presentation on the state of the district's financial prognostication for fiscal year 22. Inside of that presentation was a discussion about class sizes and ratios. The public attachment that is reflected on board docs even as we speak has a comprehensive listing of all of the ratios for every position in the district. That was available on January 12th as we facilitated the presentation, and it's available now. The very same document was uploaded to board docs yesterday at 1:10 p.m., well in advance of the 24-hour deadline for any additional documents. During the discussion on January 12th, the governing board did not give the administration any specific direction regarding changing staffing ratios for any particular position in the district. The second point I'd like to respond with regard to staffing ratios is the governing board this evening is only voting to approve a proposed budget limit of around $360 million. The governing board at any point during the year can decide what and where to apportion funds to. It doesn't need to have those decisions made to just simply approve a proposed budget limit that will go out for public review. Regarding the assertion that we are not facilitating a public hearing, the governing board meeting set for July 13th is the meeting in which there will be a public hearing as required by statute prior to the governing board's vote. Regarding the essential question of whether or not tonight's candidate is a suitable fit for the position of Director for Human Resources, under the candidate's leadership in the last 3 years, we've gone from 98 teacher vacancies in 18-19 down to 47 this year. In a response rate of 300 applicants and employees rating the Human Resources Department in 3 essential questions regarding response times, regarding a resolution of issues, or regarding overall satisfaction, 97% of our respondents noted that HR handled their situations accordingly. Tonight's applicant also finished off a year in which she was the spearhead in the effort to launch an overhaul of our compensation of the district's lowest compensated employees. That's resulted in hundreds of employees now moving to $13 an hour, a much needed and competitive salary adjustment for bus drivers and ex-ed paraprofessionals, and a much needed salary adjustment for retired employees in the district, and another raise, the second raise under her watch, for guest teachers and subs in our district. Under her leadership, she established HR Answers, a new interactive feature that allows our employees and applicants to directly interact with HR and guarantees them a response within 24 hours. And lastly, our tonight's recommendation led the process both for procurement and selection for the district's new applicant tracking / management system, a move away from AppleTrack and move into Power Schools, which has proven to be a more effective and user and applicant friendly system. So we are very, very proud of tonight's recommendation. And lastly, regarding the assertion that any temporary contracts or any probationary contracts were done irrespective or outside of governing board authority, please note that with regard to the statement about probationary contracts, remember that the consensus agreement has 2 provisions. Inside of the consensus agreement, Article 131 of the consensus agreement defines probationary teachers to include teachers that are in their 1st through 3rd year of service, as well as counselors and librarians. And also, there's another article in the TEA consensus agreement, it's Article 1.43, that defines the specific circumstances in which any member of the bargaining unit, that's any employee under the TEA agreement, social workers, counselors, nurses, teachers, any position serving under the TEA agreement, there are specific circumstances in which they get a probationary contract. First is when the employee begins a term of service for a position after Labor Day of the school year in which they're serving. That is a probationary contract. 2, if the employee is filling in on a long-term leave of absence assignment because one of our full-time employees took a long-term leave of absence, they will get a probationary contract. A teacher that is in the very, very first year of service will also get a probationary contract, And any member of the bargaining unit, teacher, counselor, social worker, librarian, that does not have the appropriate certification to get a permanent certificate and is only operating with a provisional certification or an emergency certification gets a probationary contract. This is in the consensus agreement that the governing board approved last August, heading into the 2021 school year. So the issuance of those contracts were not done outside of governing board approval. They were done through the negotiations process in a live negotiations process and a consensus agreement that is still active as of this meeting. Thank you, President Counts.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Other board members' comments or questions?
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Grijalva.
We had several calls to the audience regarding the mask use, and I just want to highlight the fact that there are only 7 zip codes in Pima County that have reached herd immunity, which is 70%. And so because TUSD is 220 square miles and because students go all over, we don't necessarily stay regional as a community, we go to different schools. It's important to note that the Delta variant, which is incredibly contagious and has had several breakthroughs, even for fully vaccinated people, is in our community. It's been detected in Tucson. And so as much as I appreciate that some people have an issue with wearing a mask, I don't have a concern about that. I do have a concern that our school communities are not, have not reached herd immunity based on the data that we've received at Pima County. And so I just want to make note that, we all have children in schools, and masks are kind of a pain for the little ones, I understand, but other ones are doing a really good job with it. And I'm looking forward to having the conversation when we have more information in about a month, because I do think that the landscape continues to change. And I personally am not in any rush to change our mitigation strategies against COVID until we get some advice contrary. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board member comments?
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
I just wanted to piggyback off Ms. Grijalva's comments. All 5 of us are parents, and so we are keeping the kids in mind as we're sending them. I think all of us have our children in summer school right now. And so as much as sometimes these masks tend to, especially now that it's hot, can be an issue, I think waiting until we see the guidance from the CDC is smart. I actually just read today that the goal that our current White House had to have 70% of people vaccinated by the July 4th deadline is not going to be met. So as much as we really want this to go away, it's going to be in our community, and frankly, this virus is going to be around. I'm open to optional masks, but I think for the time being, and especially that we only have less than a week or about a week of summer school, and I know we have high school students going through July, but I think especially for the younger ones, the under 12, they cannot get vaccinated right now. So I just want to err on the side of caution.
Thank you, Ms. Luna Rose. Any other comments? Okay. Dr. Trujillo, the consent agenda.
Yes, I have a couple of recommendations before we do consent agenda.
Okay.
We need to pull item 6.3 and have a separate vote. We do have a board member that needs to clarify his respective position and abstain. And secondly, I'm going to ask Renee Weatherless to just weigh in and just give a brief explanation of items 6.7 and 6.8. I don't want to pull them. I just want her to just give a general explanation of what those items are before the board considers consent as a whole.
Okay. Before I make that motion, are there any comments or questions before the motion? Okay. So I move consent agenda items 6.1, 6.2, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.9. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Luna Rose seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Dr. Trujillo, item 6.3.
Yes, item 6.3 is the lease amendment that extends higher grounds usage of Wakefield for another 3 years. And we have a board member that will be abstaining.
Okay. So I move that we accept item 6.3. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Grijalva seconds. I'll do a roll call. Yeah. Michelle, could you please do a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Grijalva?
Yes.
Dr. Gravosha?
Abstain.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Counts?
Yes. Thank you. Item passes. All right, Dr. Trujillo, item 6.7, or I believe it was Ms. Heuser that was going to be talking about this, or Ms. Weatherless?
Ms. Weatherless,
Ms.
if you
Weatherless.
could, give an explanation of item 6.7 and then roll right into item 6.8. As these technical financial items, we just want to make sure the community also understands before we ask our board members to vote.
Okay, certainly. Thank you, President Counts, members of the governing board, Dr. Trio, and Council Ross and staff. Item 6.7, this is an annual item. We are do have the ability to create change funds. So what a change fund is just to start opening a cash register in a bookstore, having money to make change at games. In order to have that cash on hand, we do need to request your authorization to create these change funds, and we do so on an annual basis, usually this last board meeting in June. Attached to the BAI, we do have a list of the change funds that we issue on an annual basis, so there are 10 of them, and you can see they are varied in size, the largest ones being food service, and then, at the high schools is where you'll have multiple activities happening at one time. So that is the change fund. I will make note that this is only cash on hand. It is not a petty cash fund. We do not make any disbursements out of this money. It's cut a check to the custodian of the money, and it is turned in by June 30th every fiscal year and reissued.
Thank you. 6.8 reauthorization.
So the check signers, these are additional bank accounts which are allowed per the revised statute. These go through, these are not our county. The money's running through Pima County Treasurer's Office. These are typically our Wells Fargo accounts. In order to manage how schools deposit funds into these Wells Fargo accounts, we transfer monies into our county account. And in order to manage those transactions, we have to be designated as check signers to manage those funds. So we are requesting authorization to define who those 4 check signers are in the finance department, and we do this again on an annual basis.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherless.
Thank you.
Okay, I move item 6.7 and 6.8 as presented.
Second.
Dr. Ravi seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, items pass unanimously. Thank you. Dr. Trujillo, item 7.1, administrative appointments, reassignments of Executive Director of Human Resources.
Yes,
excuse me, I'm sorry, Ms. Counts, did
Yes.
we vote for the rest of the consent?
Yes.
I feel like we voted for 6.3, Dr. Ravi abstained, and then 6.6 and 6.7, but that was all of the rest of them. I just want to make sure that it was clear.
Yeah, we did. We voted, that was the first motion I made, was the additional.
The entire one, we
Yes.
pulled that one out, and then inherent in the last vote was the rest of the consent agenda.
Right.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
our
Thank you.
first vote was
Right, our first vote was item 6.1, 6.2, 4, 5, and 9, 6 and 9, and then we pulled out 0.3, 0.7,
Okay.
and voted separately.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Executive Director of Human Resources, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President, Counts, board members, our recommendation this evening is coming off a very, very impressive year. I talked a little bit earlier on about the awesome work that she was able to facilitate with the compensation package that the governing board recently passed. Also her work on the applicant management system and bringing us into a more user and applicant friendly process has been absolutely great. She has every confidence of fulfilling the permanent position, and I'd like to recommend Mrs. Renee Heuser to fill the permanent position for Executive Director of HR.
I'll move the item.
I'll second. So Ms. Grijalva moves. I second. Michelle, can we do a roll call?
Ms. Grijalva,
Yes.
Dr. Robbie,
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose,
Yes.
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Ms. Counts.
Yes. And is Ms. Heuser here?
Ms. Heuser.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is absolutely an honor to lead such an amazing team of HR professionals, and I'm very excited at the opportunity to continue. Thank you.
Ms. Heuser, I just want to say a personal thank you and, personal congratulations and a personal thank you for all the work that I've seen you do day in and day out since I've been a board member, and just going above and beyond. And before I was elected, I heard a lot of complaints about HR and just the slow response. And since you've been in this position, I haven't heard any complaints out in the community. Response times are great, and the whole process is very smooth. And I think the numbers tell the truth, right? You've got 97% approval rate from our employees. So thank you for such a great job, and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Trujillo. Item 7.2, Interim Director of School Safety.
Yes, President Counts, board members. We're still engaged in the search for the permanent successor to Jeffrey Coleman, who retired at the conclusion of the 2021 school year. That process is still ongoing. So we'd like to extend our current Interim Director for School Safety, Mr. David Vildusea, to continue to serve as the Interim Director for School Safety.
All right. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I moved.
Ms. Counts?
Yes.
Can you just clarify the period of time, Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, we're going for a 30-day extension.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item passes unanimously. Is Mr. Ballesteros here?
David, are you online with us, sir?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Ballesteros.
Hi. Thank you very much for the opportunity again.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
awesome.
Thank you for serving.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right, Dr. Trujillo, Interim Director of Social-Emotional Learning and Development.
Yes, tonight's recommendation is coming off of her interim regional assistant superintendent assignment, where she served very, very well. And as Mr. Alvarez has come back and has rejoined our team, she is now available to assume the reins of Interim Director for Socio-Emotional Learning and Development. Mrs. Kathy Comstock has an extensive work history here in the Tucson Unified School District and is one of a distinctive few that has served as an elementary, middle, and high school principal within the span of her career. And we look forward to continuing to work with her upon your approval as we continue the search for the permanent position here for Director for Socio-Emotional Learning. So tonight's recommendation is Ms. Catherine Comstock.
So moved.
I'll move the item.
Okay. Ms. Grijalva moved, and I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Ms. Comstock, is she here?
Kathy, are you with us?
Yes, hi. Hello, thank you so much. It's an honor to continue to serve TUSD. I greatly look forward to joining this important work for our students this year. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around.
Always, thanks.
Thank you. All right, interim principal for Robeson Elementary School.
Yes, tonight's recommendation has been proudly serving in the district since 2006. Her roots run deep where she started at Bloom, where she served as a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade principal, has gone on into administration, has been serving for the last several years as assistant principal at Santa Rita, where she actually briefly held the reins as interim principal there for a short time. And tonight, we think she would make an excellent recommendation to serve as the next instructional leader and principal of Robeson Elementary. Ms. Christy Esquerra is our recommendation.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay, I moved. Miss Luna Rose second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Is Mrs. Izquierda here?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Miss Izquierda. Congratulations.
Hello. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I am so excited to be going back to my elementary roots. I just want to take a moment, though, to thank my Santa Rita's previous and current principals, James Palacios and Tamara Ray, for their wonderful support, and also our regional assistant superintendent, Ms. Holly Lehman-Hamill, for just all of them for their support, encouragement, and sharing their knowledge with me. I'm really excited. I'm going to miss my Santa Rita family, but I am excited for this new journey. Thank you.
Thank you. We're excited too. I'm sure you're going to do great. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Congratulations. Yay.
Okay, Dr. Trujillo, Interim Assistant Principal for Santa Rita High School.
Yes, tonight's recommendation comes to us as currently serving as the interim assistant principal at University High School. And most recently, she came back to the district where she was serving as a principal and preschool director in Robles Elementary in Altar Valley. And earlier on in the agenda, she was featured as the recipient of the Arizona Association of Latino Superintendents and Administrators Award for aspiring administrators. So Rosalinda Rodriguez is our recommendation to serve as interim assistant principal at Santa Rita.
Okay.
So moved.
I'll second. Ms. Luna Rose moved and I seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Ms. Rodriguez, is she here?
Yes, I am here. Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo, President Counts, and Clerk Shaw, and board members. I am extremely excited to continue to serve the TUSD community now as a Santa Rita Eagle, and so excited to join such a passionate, dedicated principal and staff, and just becoming part of their amazing work. Thank you so much for the opportunity again.
Congratulations on both accounts on your award and this new position. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Felicidades.
Gracias.
All right, Dr. Trujillo, Assistant Principal of Mansfield Middle School.
Yes, tonight's recommendation has also a proud history of service here in Tucson Unified, as she has been with the district since 2010, where she has been a middle school extraordinaire, taking 6th, 7th, and 8th grade algebra and math assignments at Morgan Maxwell, at C.E. Rose and Safford, and most recently at Davis. She transitioned into a district leadership role as a professional development academic trainer working in the Curriculum and Instruction Division, and for the last few years has been working as an interim assistant principal at Mansfield. Tonight, she is our recommendation for the permanent position of assistant principal at Mansfield Middle School. Of course, one of our premier magnet schools in the district. Our recommendation is Mrs. Sarah Sultan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I moved. Ms. Luna Rose second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Ms. Sultan, congratulations. Are you here?
I am here. Thank you so much. I'm honored to remain a part of Bulldog Nation. It's been an honor to work there, and I'm really excited to stay there, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Have a great year, and thank you. All right. Looks like our last one for the evening is the assistant principal for Mary Bell McCorkle.
Yes, tonight's recommendation is not going to be able to be online tonight, but she is going to be headed for Mary Bell McCorkle, where she will serve as the school's second assistant principal. The Mary Bell McCorkle Academy of Excellence has requested the additional administrative help due to the size of the school. We feel that tonight's recommendation has the expertise, the knowledge, the energy, and the enthusiasm to provide that support and add to an incredible team at McCorkle. So tonight we're going to recommend Vanessa Rene Morales as the assistant principal at McCorkle Academy of Excellence.
Great. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I moved and Miss Luna Rose second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Congratulations to Miss Morales. Thank you for serving our district and our students. Okay, Dr. Trujillo, item 7.8, approval for the use of cooperative contracts for online supplemental curriculum materials and support services for next fiscal year. For this fiscal year.
Thank you. President Counts, board members, this is a two-pronged action request on this item. The first action requested is actually from our purchasing department to be able to engage these vendors through the cooperative contracts that they hold. And then the second part of this process will be the approval of the funding needed to continue on with these vendors. So I've got Deanna Kierfoot to handle the purchasing side of things. And then as always, when you're asked to vote on instructional programs and resources, we do like to have the curriculum and instruction team just give you a brief overview of the instructional programs, the usage reports from students, the funding source that's going to be used to fund the particular programs so that you have well-rounded information prior to the vote. With that, I'll turn it over to first, we'll start with Diana, and then we'll shift over to Heidi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, President Counts, board members, Dr. Trujillo and Council Ross. Yes, we're bringing this forward to you this evening. The purchases that the curriculum department makes on these items, each of these purchases or most of these purchases are, we're purchasing them under cooperative contracts. They are SAVE contracts that my department, we've done the due diligence on them. It's contracts and vendors that we have been using for several years on many of these items. And we're just requesting from the purchasing side that you allow us to continue to use those contracts as we need to purchase the instructional materials for the student. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Heidi and let her walk through the presentation and kind of show you what it is that, that the students are using and what we'll be purchasing.
Thank you, Diana. Good evening, President Counts, Clerk Shaw, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, and legal counsel. Tonight we come to you with an overview of curriculum purchases for the 21-22 school year. Next slide. Our objectives tonight are to provide information on the curricular and instructional resources available to teachers and provide information regarding the data on use and student progress. Next slide. There are two types of digital platforms that we purchase to support teaching and learning. The first are curriculum content platforms. These platforms provide actual content related to the specific subject areas. These various platforms and programs are used for first-time instruction as well as additional support such as intervention. Some of these programs are textbook adoptions and some are used as supplemental curriculum. And in this chart, you have an overview of what platforms are used for different content areas at different grade levels. Next slide. The second type of platforms that we provide are instructional platforms that enhance teaching and learning. These types of programs aid in the organization, structure, and systemic delivery of instruction. Next slide. The purchase and approval of these programs happens over time, but tonight we have organized them into these categories. These platforms that you're seeing on the screen right now have already been approved and their purchase will or has already occurred. These are platforms such as Apex, which was approved through a textbook adoption process. Benchmark and Advance and Cengage were also textbook adoption processes. Canvas was approved as part of our Learning Management System initiative. And then the other two are iReady, which is an intervention program, and M-Class platform with Dibble's 8th edition, which is a required platform from ADE that supports our literacy screening in K-3. Next slide. These purchases are part of our normal suite of basic resources for our teachers and students. Some of these programs, however, were additions as we went remote that teachers that were essential for teachers, but also have become will become part of our normal suite of resources. For example, Newsella is one of the platforms that we identified during as soon as we went remote in March of 2020, right? But it has really become a basic resource, especially for social studies, as well as ELA. Next slide. This is a list of platforms that we will request with ESSER 3 funds in our efforts to provide a robust system of learning, including Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Some of these purchases are to expand our current use, such as iExcel. We get many requests from K-3 teachers for the use of iExcel and access to iExcel, so we would request expansion of the use of iExcel into K-3 with ESSER 3. However, we normally buy that for grades 4 through 12. Some of these are digital pieces to current adoptions, such as the Scholastic Book Room now has a digital component to it. And others would be new, such as database questioning online and turnitin.com. And those platforms have been identified by teachers as essential to their work. Next slide. So I'd like to provide you with a brief overview of the data provided through these platforms. This data demonstrates the impact on the number of students these programs serve. As you can see, iExcel is our most widely used platform. And then depending on the different platforms, that usage goes down because some of them are very specialized. Some of them are only for one content area. Some of them are used only with our earliest learners, such as Waterford. So you see that not as many students are users of Waterford. Next slide. So this is some data on iExcel and our usage of iExcel. You'll see that TUSD students answered more than 55 million questions on iExcel this school year. They mastered about over 500,000 skills, were proficient in another million, and practiced over 1.7 million skills. Some of the data that we get about those skills as a district is we see what are the skills that teachers are mostly assigning to students. So what are some of our biggest areas of emphasis in our different grade levels? I know as the curriculum department, we looked at some of those reports to see where our teachers were needing additional support and resources. On the left-hand bottom, you'll see some diagnostic information. This information, feature was not used as much this past year, but it is one of our major focuses for the use of this platform for next year, and that is a diagnostic assessment. The diagnostic assessment will provide us with data as a district, at a district level, at a school level, and at a grade level, and a class level, and individual student level. And this diagnostic data provides teachers with information about students in regards to where they are in their grade level proficiency. So it might say the student is at grade level, the student is below grade level, above grade level, or far below grade level, and then it will actually provide very specific information about what skills the student is lacking, as well as what would be recommended skills that the student could focus on next. So that's sort of a preview of some of the data that we will be really emphasizing next year. Next slide. Our Waterford Early Literacy Program is our K-3 reading intervention, one of our K-3 literacy intervention programs. I wanted to share this data because this is our end of year report, and as you what you will see here is this dark blue line demonstrates kids that were at pre-reading 1 level. That's the lowest level on Waterford Early Literacy. And you can see that number dramatically decreasing over the year. These are the 3, this is over the months. So you see that blue line very much smaller at the end of the year, and our red line much higher. But also some of these students moved from that pre-reading right onto basic reading. So you see sort of the progress of students over the school year, which is good news for us as our youngest readers. We see that this platform was really useful to them during a remote instruction. Next slide. iReady is a new program of intervention for middle school. We are using iReady this summer as a pre and post assessment on the identified skills that we are targeting in ELA and math this summer. So here's an example of the standards mastery in math, and you'll see that this yellow line is usually the largest line in the data for almost all schools. That is the percentage of students that are at the beginning level of that standard mastery of the grade level that they just finished. And so what we hope to see by the end of next week, by the end of summer school, is that this yellow line would dramatically decrease, and that we would see an increase in the amount of students that are progressing towards standard mastery or proficient in standards mastery. So iReady has a lot of different uses. We are using it for summer school pre and post, but it is also used during the school year for diagnostic assessments as well as intervention. Next slide. So some of our platforms have a very wide use. I mentioned Newsela earlier. This graph just shows what teachers are using it. We see ELD teachers are using this. We see ELA teachers and science teachers, social studies, and then teachers from other subjects that are not the core subjects. So it might be a PE teacher or some elective teachers. And Newsela offers basically current event news stories that are leveled according to different levels that students have. So everybody has an entry point. They can all read the same content of an article, but at their different reading levels. So some of our programs are used by almost all the teachers in the district. Next slide. So we would like to we have identified certain goals for usage of these platforms for next year. Like I said earlier, we're going to increase the use of diagnostic tools, provide extensive professional development on the effective implementation to teachers, interventionists, and instructional support. The 4 days of professional development will really support that endeavor. Provide training on interpreting the data results to teachers, interventionists, and instructional support. To use data reports for grade level collaborative teacher teams, the MTSS process, and administrator reporting. And finally, to measure program effectiveness as usage increases. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. And I'd like to open it up to questions.
Any questions, board members?
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose?
Oh, this is Ms. Shaw.
Oh, Ms. Shaw, yes.
Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation. Looking at one of these charts, I think it's, slide 8. I see that, the Scholastic Bookroom Accelerator is being used like very little, I think probably under 2,500 unique users. And I see that is the one thing on the list that's the most expensive with 1.8 million. That would be how much to purchase. So this is just basically a digital library, correct?
Let me explain a little bit about that. Thanks for the question. This is an actual program that we don't have currently. We have, I think, 2 schools that have purchased it on their own with their own funds. because they felt it was critically important during the pandemic. And so that is one of our proposals that we're making for ESSER 3. So there is low usage because our schools actually don't have access at this point to that platform. So I would expect that to increase significantly if that is purchased. And the other thing I wanted to say about the Scholastic purchase is that it is a one-time purchase for continuous access, continuous use forever. So some of these things, for example, IXL, we purchase every single year because they're a subscription-based program. The Scholastic is a one-time purchase. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you for clarifying that. Still, I think since we're kind of moving to going back to school and there's going to be a lot less remote students, I would hope that we can put all that money instead towards the purchase of physical books. And
one more comment about that. I'm sorry, Mishad. They do have Scholastic book rooms at the school. These are additional digital titles as well as the NSGRA assessment that schools use in that assessment system. So it is coupled with actual books.
Okay, and do we already have a digital book platform that we purchased already?
We don't have a digital book platform.
I thought that Waterford had some sort of digital book component. I remember
They might have a few titles once students test out of Waterford.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Dr. Ravi.
I thank you for the presentation this evening, Ms. Kerfoot and Ms. Aranda. I want to just clarify, what are we approving tonight is an action item, so it wasn't just informational. Are we approving items in slide 6 and 7 or just slide 6? What are we being asked to approve tonight?
Ms. Aranda or Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, I'll go ahead and take it from here. So as I said in the intro to this item, we put dollar amounts on the projected expenditures that we're expecting to purchase these programs with. Diana Kerfoot for purchasing is looking for governing board action to utilize these vendors through the cooperative contracts that they hold right now with the state. That's action number 1. And because several of these vendors will overtake the $250,000 threshold that we have before we have to bring expenditures to the governing board for approval, we wanted to present them as a bulk for governing board action. So it is the quotes that we have lined up on slide number 6.
So just slide
And
6,
7.
not the ESSER 3. We're doing that in a separate.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members? Okay. I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, Dr. Ravi seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Aranda.
Thank you.
And Ms. Kerfoot, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 7.9, funding for preschool playground structures and shade. Dr. Trujillo. And please remember to vote online, board members.
Yes, President counts, board members. At the April 13th governing board meeting, the governing board, of course, passed a comprehensive support package for capital funding for the arts, for interscholastic programs, and also for playground equipment for our preschool programs. The purchasing costs have come back a little bit more expensive for the schools and programs identified. And here to talk about the additional funding that's needed and the reason why we need the additional funding to make sure that we complete the purchase and installation is our Director for Pre-K Programming in Community Schools, Mrs. Reem Kievit.
Good evening, President Counts, board members, Dr. Trujillo, and legal counsel. Thank you so much for having us tonight. As Dr. Trujillo mentioned, at the April 13th board meeting, we came to you for approval. At that board meeting, we requested just over $480,000 in funding for this project. Since then, our vendor, TUSD Risk Management and TUSD Facilities, walked the grounds and assessed safety measures, DHS licensing requirements and compliance, and the exact needs per site. I have with me as a co-presenter Jeff Shepard from Play It Safe Playgrounds, so that he can help me answer any questions or concerns that you have. Essentially, the initial quote was an estimate before the vendor and TUSD team had the opportunity to walk the grounds and make their assessment. Each school approach was based on 4 major criteria: selecting the most reasonable location, selecting playgrounds with high play value, safety surfaces, and ADA access. 2 sites required permanent fencing from Department of Health Services in order for our playgrounds to be approved and considered in compliance. We also, I know another piece that increased the cost was we decided to go with wood fiber instead of wood chips or sand in the playground areas. And the reason for that is because 50% of our students in our preschool programs are students with disabilities. And so we have many students with that are in wheelchairs or have walkers, and we didn't want to segregate them or not give them the same access to that equipment as their peers, give them an opportunity to interact in a modified version. And in order to do that, we had to go with the wood fiber. The costs I did submit for your review the exact breakdown of cost, which included taxes and labor and all of that. So maybe you had a chance to review that and take a look. The page that's being shared right now is the overall cost totals for each site. Pueblo Gardens at the bottom is going to be funded through our department funds. We added them afterwards, so you guys are not covering that cost for us. It's the sites at the top. And so once they were able to assess the different needs, we also then were there's some sites that need to be, equipment needs to be moved, the areas need to be, there's an evacuation process, and there's added curbing, the temporary fence, the demo, there's some relocation of stuff. And so with all of that per site, that's going to be the cost. So we didn't know those essentials at the April 13th board meeting, so we knew there might be an increase in cost. We just weren't sure how much. And now that we have the hard figures, we're coming back in hopes to get that additional $155,000 to complete the project. And so that's my overview and summary. I have Jeff with me in case I need help answering some specifics about the work. So what questions do you have for us?
Board members.
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
So are these the ones listed here in green? Are these just the only schools that need the upgrade to become ADA
Yeah, these
compliant?
are sites that have nothing. So all the playground structures come with shade as part of it. I'll tell you now, we have some sites that don't have shade, and when we investigate getting shade for those playground structures, it's almost as much as a playground structure. It's very, very expensive, which was shocking to me. But these are the sites that have nothing, and it'll catch them up to some of, all the other playgrounds and at different sites in our department.
Okay, so, and then the cost, I know because you said you wanted to get away from the wood chips because of our students with disabilities who would be unfairly left out of being able to play with their friends on the playground. So I appreciate that. But did any of the costs go up because of, I know just building costs in general have gone up because of during COVID. So is this part of that?
I will defer to Jeff to answer that.
Very good question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for having me this evening. You're correct. Costs have gone up in a lot of areas significantly this year. The only cost increase that you guys will see will be in the area of freight, which is on that very first column. That's why we have it listed. But aside from that, we took a stringent look at everything that was necessary from play value on down to the safety and the warranty side of things. And so, no, we actually even realized it was our best advantage to use sales structures for the predominant number of play structures that we're going to be installing if you guys approve it.
I think, as a person that's been involved in the ECE community for a long time, I think that this is a very modest financial adjustment when it comes to playground equipment that can always be more than expected. I have a question about the shade structures. So originally, I remember asking that if shade structures were going to be a part of this purchase. So Ms. Kiewit, you're saying that we have eliminated that?
No, I'm so sorry. Let me clarify.
Okay.
All of these playground structures that are presented for you tonight include shade structures with the playground structures. I was just referencing the fact that some of our other sites don't have that beautiful shade for the kids, especially luckily they're not in session during the heat in the summer, but not all of our sites across the district have the shade. So they're going to be very lucky to have both.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And I would press administration to protect our investment, as we can see, is very expensive in playground equipment, and protecting our students from the harmful rays of the sun, and investing in either, at the very least, tree shade, and then hopefully some really solid shade structures for every playground. Any other board member questions or comments?
Ms. Counts?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, actually. Wondering if these playgrounds will be installed by the next school year in time for those new students to use them. And also, looking over the document, I believe it said that once each of these play structures are installed, that they will be power washed. And I'm wondering how necessary is that power wash, just in the spirit of trying to save water? Thank you.
Jeff?
Okay, thanks. So to the question of will they be installed before the next school year, the unfortunate part to that answer is no. However, what we have done is we have placed each site on a tentative order upon your approval, so that we can have, we've saved a time slot, because school season is every summer. And so there's always a huge demand for playgrounds. And so we worked with our vendor to get a slot reserved for TUSD, where right now we're running 10 to 12 weeks for shipment. You guys will be at an 8-week window, because we were able to do this a few weeks back. So there will be some schools that will get done early, or at the end of summer in this case, prior to school starting, but the bulk will be done early in the school year, which we are very comfortable working in the school environment with our temp fencing to make sure that we don't inhibit any child from doing what they need to do throughout the day. Your second question, I'm sorry, can you refresh that one for me?
It's about the power washing.
Power washing the...
Oh, okay. So what we do, the reason that's listed there is we actually have secured, and we did this right at the beginning of COVID, a third party that will come in, and actually it's more than just a power wash. And obviously they're going to put some disinfectant on the playground, so that when we turn it over to the kids, it's just not mud and whatever else may have been out there. Plus we do a full scale report to make sure that the playground is totally ADA compliant and fully adherent for all playground requirements. So it's a third-party source that we use. If you wish that we didn't do that, that would not be any kind of deal killer.
I would think it would be important.
Wanted some clarification on that, but thank you.
Just for equipment coming probably from across the world, from factories, and to get that as safe and as healthy as possible for our kids. I think that power washing would be an important component of that. Any other questions? All right, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, I moved. Ms. Natalie Luna Rose seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, Reem and Mr. Shepherd, and thanks. This is exciting for our kiddos.
Thank you so much. We are so deeply grateful, and I can't wait to send you guys pictures of the kids playing and learning and having fun together. All thanks to you. So awesome. Thank you.
Please do send us those photos. Thank you.
Oh, I will. I will. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
All your work.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Trujillo, item 7.10, approval of fiscal year 21-22 proposed annual expenditure budget.
Yes, President and Counts, governing board members, this is the featured item of the evening. Just a couple of notes for the public. The governing board is not voting to formally adopt the school district budget this evening. What the governing board is going to do is consider adoption of this district administration's proposal for a school district budget, known as the proposed budget. Per state law, the governing board is not permitted to vote to adopt formally the school district budget until it is publicly posted for at least 10 days. At the July 13th governing board meeting, the administration will return and facilitate a public hearing, which functions very much like a call to the audience, where all concerns, all comments, all feedback regarding the budget will be heard by the governing board prior to its vote. The second note I want to make for the public and everybody that's watching, tonight's action is simply to vote for the budget capacity or the budget limit, the projected budget limit for fiscal year 22, which is going to be at or near $360 million. It effectively the size of the pie. The governing board can decide at any point during the year where it wants to allocate monies from one area expenditure to another. These decisions and discussions don't have to be finalized for the governing board to vote to approve the size of the school district budget. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Renee Weatherless, who will lead us through tonight's presentation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Trio. So good evening, President Counts, members of the governing board, Council Ross, and staff. Thank you for this opportunity. I am here to present tonight's proposed budget. If we go ahead and jump to the next slide, we're going to be looking at what our budget deadlines are. Dr. Trio mentioned a little bit about that. Go through where we are with the budget right now and some assumptions that were included in these calculations of the budget limits, as well as other factors that have been decided to date. Look at the ADM that was assumed in this budget limit, and then also take a look at the expenditure budget itself, and touch on the budget book, the classroom spending estimates, and then talk a little bit about the tax rate at the end. So if we go to the next slide. So per revised statute, we are required to submit, to get approved a proposed budget and submit it to ADE no later than July 5th. So we are here tonight to request that approval. And then we will be back on July 13th with the adopted budget. And the deadline to submit that, an approved adopted budget to ADE, is July 15th. Typically, in any given year, we will come back and revise the current year budget in May. We just had a fiscal 21 May revision not too long ago. And when the year is actually over, we'll be back on the following October to present the annual financial report. Next slide, please. So let's talk about where we are right now. So as of June 16th, and even as of today, really, the state budget has not been finalized yet. So even though that the budget limit, the base support level has not been finalized in the statute, we are still required to meet those deadlines that I just mentioned. So tonight we're here. I do want to point out, though, that once that the budget does get finalized, then we could be coming back to you to submit a budget revision. And we would do that by September 15th. So for tonight's proposed budget limits, we've used the following assumptions. And these assumptions are things that have already been proposed, things that we have been aware of for quite some time and feel pretty comfortable bringing forth in the calculation tonight. And the first of which is the base support level. So how much money do we get per 1.0 average daily membership? That number is $4,390.65. So if you compare that number to the prior year, the fiscal 21 number, it did go up almost $85. Part of that increase is $52.10 is inflation. That's the 1.21% for inflation, like your cost of living increases from year to year. And then the other $32.80 is the monies that were previously funded in Classroom Site Fund last year. We knew there was a one-time funding in Classroom Site Fund that would end up getting transferred over into M&O, into the base support. And in addition to those two assumptions, we also removed the district additional assistance or the capital reduction. So if you've seen our budgets in prior years, you've seen that each year the formula would indicate how much money we should be receiving in capital, but there was a reduction that was also managed at the state level. We're supposed to be fully funded for capital beginning in fiscal year 22. So in the budget limit that you're seeing tonight, there is no capital reduction. So if you go to the next slide, some other budget factors. Classroom site funds. We do talk about how our classroom site funds are being spent. We've brought forth a proposal to you in the prior weeks. That revenue per pupil is set at the state level, and that is $733 per pupil. The enrollment assumption, what is our enrollment going to look like? Well, what we have proposed tonight is flat enrollment. So our what we're reporting as our 100th day enrollment for fiscal 21, we are assuming flat enrollment for fiscal 22. And then our teacher experience index. This is the index where if our teacher years of experience, our average years of experience exceeds that of the state, we actually get a little bump on our base support or our M&O revenue. And we did see an increase this year to the tune of 0.3%. So that does help out our budget limit. Next slide, please. So in looking at what are the things that we were trying to accomplish in the fiscal 22 school year. And some of these things you have already seen come before you, and we'll note later on in the presentation. The first of which is to fund the wage and salary recommendations from the compensation study. These were brought forth. This is something that's included in this budget proposal, as well as wanting to commit to any future compensation equity. Revising and publishing reentry plans. So we have brought our ESSER 2 proposal to you. We'll be coming forth in the future with ESSER 3. And so as those proposals are brought forth and approved by the governing board, any kind of adjustments for those will be made in the current year budget. With the funding also comes monitoring and compliance, so we will continue to monitor the use of all of those ESSER funds, be it 1, 2, or 3 in the coming school year. Meet the requirements of the desegregation court order as outlined to cease supervision. So again, deseg is embedded, it is included in this proposed budget. You'll see a slide coming in the presentation. Next slide, please. You have approved a minimum of 1% carry forward in our policy, and so that is also included in this FY22 budget. We will continue to follow reentry plans and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So that will be part of our reentry. We will bring it back as part of the ESSER proposal. We will be required to post those plans again by the first day of school. And as we've been trying to do, and we've made great strides in it over the past couple of years, is to continue to shift dollars into the classroom. And that's as defined by the Auditor General Classroom Dollar Report. So you'll see that when we talk about what our instructional spending looks like in this particular budget. And then lastly is to just continue the status of our pending desegregation property tax. So we did get a favorable ruling on this. It is still outstanding, and the district still has yet to see those funds. So we just need to keep an eye on that. So if we go to the next slide, what I'm showing here is these are just the assumptions that we talked about enrollment, where we are funded on average daily membership, which takes our enrollment by a full-time status, and we calculate the average over the first 100 days. So in this case, you will see where our 22 proposed budget is. And as I said, I was before you last month for the May revision, that those numbers are basically flat. And so we're assuming flat enrollment. Next slide. The other part of our average daily membership is weights. We have Group A weight, Group B weight. These are for our disabilities. I will point out that there is a proposal to change some of the Group B weighting in the fiscal 22 budgets. Those are not included in this budget limit proposal tonight. So if the legislature finalizes the budget and those weights are definitely included in the budget, then that will get factored in at that time. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're starting with M&O and capital. And the reason being is these are our two levied funds. These are the ones that impact our community, and it's all based on our weighted student counts and where the majority of our expenditures in the school district lie. So starting at the top, we start with our weighted student count. So we're just showing that what you're looking at, a difference of 60, that's actually part of our K-3 reading numbers that we have already seen. So it's a slight increase. Otherwise, everything else is still flat. The base support, I mentioned that it was increased about $85, part for inflation, part for the money that was transferred over from Classroom Site Fund. So that, combined with the fact that in fiscal 21, we took some distance learning revenue reductions. So that's why we're seeing that significant increase year over year. Our audit fees have changed slightly. Desegregation, we are flat. We are funded flat for desegregation at $63.7 million, but that money can go between M&O and capital. So where you see a positive increase on the M&O side there, you'll see the negative down below in the capital section. Energy savings. What that is we took on some lease projects for energy savings and performance. This was a few years back. And so the savings that we incur are used to make those lease payments. So per statute, we have to take those M&O savings dollars out of our budget limit in order to put it in another fund and make those payments. Tuition and prior year carryover, you're seeing a slight decrease of $1 million. But what the impact of that is in May of 21, we carried money over because we closed for the fourth quarter, and we also had the use of some ESSER funds. So it generated a carry forward in M&O of almost $14 million. In FY22, we see that number is just under $13 million. And what that's coming from is the savings that we've generated in M&O this year, one due to being remote for majority of the school year, as well as, again, the availability of Enrollment Stability Grant and ESSER funding. So our M&O budget limit will be $333 million for M&O next year. On the capital side, you're seeing an increase, and that is because the reduction is gone. So, that takes that into account, and then the tuition prior year carryover. So again, same thing, unexpended budget capacity from 20 going into 21 was $4.5 million. Coming out of this year, going into next, that number is higher at 10.8. So the total capital budget limit for this year will be $32.5 million. So when you take the M&O budget limit, 33 million, and capital 32, that's the $365 million budget limit that Dr. Trujillo mentioned a little bit earlier. So if we go to the next slide. So once we talked about how to establish the budget limit, which is the 33 million M&O and the 32 capital. Now let's look at our budget expenditures. So one of the things that I want to point out is when you're looking at the top chart, 33 million of the budget limit, and we have a proposed budget this year of 33. So right now there's zero remaining balance, zero carry forward. In the capital column, we have a budget limit of 32 million and our estimated expenditures of 27.4. That includes the 3.6 per the policy. It's the 1% carry forward per the contingency policy. So that leaves a remaining balance of 4.6 million. The expenditure budget itself that's being proposed tonight includes all of the following budget initiatives. So next to each one of these items, I did include the dates in which the board has approved these items, the first of which is the compensation study. So that included raising our minimum hourly rate across the district to $13, taking our TA minimum or starting pay to $15, as well as our bus driver minimum hourly rate to $16. All of that amounted to $4 million. And just for your information, so you know the funding source, it's spread across all the funding sources in the district. There was a part of that entire proposal was to address compression, part of it being ex-ed, TA compression, and bus drivers. So you can see the $485,000 as well as $200,000 for bus drivers and the funding sources that are affected by that. A decision was approved to increase the amount, the rate of pay at which we bring our ASRS retirees back. So it was going up from 73.5% up to 80%. So that was about $600,000 cost. And the funding sources are really across all funding sources. And the last of which that compensation initiative was to increase the substitute daily rates. So the total of that initiative was about $175,000. So in addition to that, back in April, one step for all employee groups was approved, so it was about $3.3 million. On April 13th, a capital proposal was brought before you and approved for fine arts instruments as well as expansion. It included interscholastics, equipment and facilities, and we just saw the item before where part of that pre-K outdoor equipment was initially approved. And then finally, back in March, we had the employee benefit health insurance where we did see some increases in our rates and to the tune of about 4.9 to the district. And then utilities were just approved the prior meeting for a total of $19 million, but really it was an increase of about $411,000. And all of that utilities is primarily out of M&O. So there was a lot of work done this spring, and the amount for all of those initiatives came out to $20 million. So I just want to point out that all of these initiatives have been embedded and included in this proposed budget tonight. Do you have any questions here? Let me pause for a second. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so some other expenditure initiatives that were approved. We did bring forth the Classroom Site Fund expenditure package. I mentioned earlier the per pupil revenue was going to be $733 per pupil. That amounted to $35.5 million for next year. And that package also included some FTE to the tune of about 14 for fine arts teachers. And then ESSER funding. This shows up under our grants funding level for federal, and that was approved on our prior meeting for $76.3 million. So if you go to the next slide, I've just provided all of the detail. This is a repeat of the night that you approved this, but it's just for the general public and the information on what was included in that proposal. go ahead and go to the next slide. Same thing for your ESSER funding. This is a repeat of what you have already approved for that ESSER 2 package. So if we continue to the next slide. So the proposed budget book, there is an attachment that does include hundreds of pages of the budget book, and it is available for anyone who wants to dive into the detail of all of the allocations. As Dr. Trujillo mentioned, the budget book is really not what's being approved tonight. It is the budget limits, and you will see those in the other attachment called the budget forms. Those are the forms that we have to get approved, signed, and submit those to ADE. The budget book can change. If the board decides to make allocation changes on where money is being spent, we can manage that going forward on a day-to-day basis. But for right now, the book does include detail at a funding source level. It will show you M&O, it shows you every fund that the district has and the budgets that's being proposed tonight, as well as the levels. So if you wanted to see how much is being allocated to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, et cetera, as well as departments. It is by site, it is by object code. So when you want to see how much we're spending on salaries or benefits or supplies, all of that information is in there, as well as the final report, which is the last one in there. Detailed line items. You will get into the actual detail within all of those items I just described above, and that is available for the general public viewing. Next slide, please. So the highlights of all of that, all of the budget book and all of the funding is on FY22, we talked about M&O, and 4 lines down, we talked about capital. So we've already established the budget limits for those two. But going into the other funding sources, instructional improvement, those are gaming revenues that we use to partially fund our all-day K. Classroom site funds we've talked about. Federal grants, we make some assumptions on our federal grants because clearly we don't know exactly the dollar amounts that we're going to be awarded, but we do make some projections on it, and we do include it in this budget. Same for state. Federal grants does include our ESSER 2 funding for that has already been approved. And then other funds, there's details in there that would include our tax credits, our food service, our civic, all the rest of the funds in the district. And then internal service is primarily your employee benefits type funds, your print shop, and workers' comp. So this proposed budget does amount to a total of $660 million. So just for a point of reference, I did include what our totals for the 21 adopted are. So you can see that the total is going up $76 million from 21 adopted to our 22 adopted. And just for information, I've also attached what our actual expenditures were for fiscal year 20 and 19. So you can see how those expenditures have changed over time. Now, if you look at this same budget limit, the total of all funding sources, $660 million, and you go to the next slide, we start looking at these numbers a little bit different. So in this one, we are looking specifically at DSEG. So with DSEG, we do have a separate set of templates that have been defined by the DSEG budget process. And these are the 10 categories that they fall under. So again, I mentioned that our funding for DSEG is capped at $63.7 million. It does not change. And so this is just a summary of how those dollars get rolled up into those USP activity codes. If you were to go look at the budget book, on the last section of the report, you will find by site how all of the DSEG money gets allocated. It'll list you positions and different types of expenditures, PD, you name it, it's all included in there. Typically at this time, we would present to you any objections, final objections that we would have from either the special master and plaintiffs. We just have not received them at this time. So they will be communicated to you when they are received. Next slide, please. So that $660 million, it's just another look. We're slicing it not between funding sources, but against levels. So you can see elementary schools account for $119 million, all the way down to departments. I will note that you're seeing a large increase for departments of $82 million. I can say at this point that the ESSER proposal funding has been put in as probably about 15 line items, all at the department level, because we are working to get all of those monies allocated out based on those approvals and all of the plans that have been submitted in the process. So throughout the year, you will see that money move out of that department level and back into the schools where they belong when we start spending all of those allocations that you have approved. Next slide, please. So that does conclude my presentation, and I will take any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherless. Board members. Ms. Grijalva, did you have your hand raised? No? Okay.
No, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to echo that, Ms. Weather. This is one of the better presentations I've seen of yours. I think is a really succinct and a really good explanation of everything. So really good job tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. So I will move the item 7.10 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Natalie Luna Rose seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Weatherless, for that very informative and well put together presentation.
One request, Ms. Counts. You know,
Yes.
we had talked about the proposed staffing formulas and how it was already approved in the past. I think one question that came up as I was reading the documents, and one reason I asked for this as well as community members, I just want to see what changes were in there. Could we approved, you know, especially with SR2 and other things, a lot of new counselors and other positions, and how that's going to change some of the staffing ratios. If there's any changes based on what we approved. I think anything's going to be better than what we had approved in the past in terms of ratios, and just wanted to get more clarification on how some of the things we approved over the last few months and things that were approved before this new board started is changed based on new funding.
That's an excellent point, Dr. Gravoy-Shaw. So what I'm going to ask Renee to do is, it's important to note that all of the positional ratios that you see in the document that's been uploaded is pure maintenance and operations money. Mm-hmm. So what I can ask Renee to do is to maybe do a universal ratio that includes all funding sources. Mm-hmm. That way you see the difference with your other sources that are paying for positions layered in. When you pay for counselors through Title I, you pay for them through ESSER, you're lowering your ratios. Mm-hmm. So I think we can put that together, Ms. Weatherless. That might be helpful.
With the caveat, we understand it's probably going to be temporary based on the temporary nature of the funds, unless we find a way to pay for this. But at least will give us a sense of what we're able to do temporarily and what we might be able to want to strive for based on our funding in the years ahead.
Absolutely.
All right. Dr. Trujillo, item 7.11, review, approve, and adopt the revised 21-22 employee agreement for non-bargaining employees.
Yes, I'd like to welcome our Director for Employee Relations, Ms. Maricela Mesa. She will lead us through tonight's proposed non-bargaining unit agreement and cover any major changes. Ms. Mesa.
Thank you. Board President Counts, Board Clerk Shaw, and governing board members, I present to you the 21-22 non-bargaining agreement. A summary has been provided to you of the changes. I do want to add that in the summary, inadvertently, a change to Article 9E was left off. In that article, it bars pay for any unused vacation if you leave within the first 6 months. And this provision applies solely to non-bargaining. And we are asking for approval today.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Board members, any discussion? I don't hear any comments. Michelle, can we do a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Grijalva?
Yes.
Dr. Gravoy-Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw.
Yes. Item passes. Thank you, Ms. Meza.
Thank you.
Dr. Trujillo, item 712.
Yes, item 7.12, we'll keep it right here with Ms. Mesa. We have the recommendation for the governing board to adopt a 21-22 meet and confer consensus agreement with Eli. Ms. Mesa?
Hello, we're here to present the Eli agreement, and here today are Eli president for incoming year, Frank Armenta, and Michael Boreal, who is instrumental in ensuring our collaboration with Eli. They're both present today, and we submit to you the summary of substantive changes. And I also want to add to the summary that we also came to, we're engaging in an MOA to use Title II funds to be for designated for PD use for our administrators in the amount of $50,000. So we're asking for approval of the Eli agreement as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, I moved. Ms. Grijalva seconded. Board member comments, questions? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, item passes. Thank you so much. Ms. Meza. All right, Dr. Trujillo, we are going on to 7.12, review and approve of the adopt revised 2021-22 meet and confer agreement for Eli administrators. Sorry, what was that?
We did that one. That was the one we just did.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, item 7.3, extend the TUSD TEA consensus agreement. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President, Council, board members, I'll ask Maricela to step forward again. We are seeking a 45-day extension for the current consensus agreement because we are still waiting ratification for the newly proposed. Ms. Mesa?
Thank you. Per Article 34, the consensus agreement, if the item has not been ratified by the end of the fiscal year, it will be automatically renewed for 40 or continued for 45 days, provided we conducted negotiations in good faith. I'm here to avow that we have conducted negotiations in good faith, and we are asking for an extension until August 31st, just to ensure there is time for ratification and to present at a board meeting in a timely manner.
Board member questions, comments?
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Grijalva.
I really would, I know that this has been a especially difficult year with trying to get people together, and but I do, and I don't want to get to the point where we were in previous boards where there was this deadline, or we weren't going to have a contract, that kind of thing. But I really would like to see this upcoming year that these items come sooner before people leave for the summer, so everybody understands what their compensation is going to look like for the upcoming year, because I think that would have been, it's really going to be, I think, really positive for a lot of employees. And so I would have liked them to go, sign their contract happily and go off for the summer and come back and know what their compensation would look like. So I appreciate that it is not, I'm not trying to lay blame here, just to sort of throw it out there that I really would like to see these come back earlier next year before people leave for the summer.
Thank you. Dr. Ravi, did you move the item? Okay, and I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on to item 7.14, extend the TUSD TEA white collar and food service agreement. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, board president, accounts and board members. Maricela is back with the same request for the white collar and food service community represented by TEA and their respective consensus agreement. Ms. Mesa?
Thank you. Article 26 of the white collar food service agreement mirrors the language of Article 34 in the consensus agreement, calling for automatic extension of 45 days if the item is not ratified prior to expiration. we're again asking for till August 31st to allow time for ratification and for board approval.
I'll move the item.
I'll second. Ms. Grijalva moves, and I second. Board member comments, questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, item passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Trujillo, item 8.1, study action for the Budget Advisory Committee.
Yes, President Counts, board members, this is the the follow-up item to the initial establishment of the Budget Advisory Committee. Part of the charge of the Budget Advisory Committee is for it to discuss, research, and make recommendations for governing board assigned expenditure priorities for the upcoming school year. Here to lead us through that presentation and the proposed priorities is, of course, Dr. Ravi Gravoy-Shaw, who is the governing board's representative on the board, on the Budget Advisory Committee. Dr. Gravoy-Shaw.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo and President Counts and governing board members. And I want to do a shout out and thank you to Ms. Weatherless for all of her work in putting this together and the team for the presentation here tonight. I'm really excited about the Budget Advisory Committee, as you all know, and I think this will be a really great way to really help our district and our governing board really succeed in meeting priorities. And go to the next slide, please. And so first, I want to do a quick recap on what is the Budget Advisory Committee, the BAC. So if you remember, we approved the Budget Advisory Committee back in February. It is a committee, and we'll go over the membership in a little bit, really help. The goal is to really support the governing board so they can make well-informed decisions regarding spending priorities. I think we all have priorities. We have a lot of ideas in terms of what we want to see in our district. And this is a way for us to vet these ideas, both with some experts and participants in the community on this committee, as well as having community input through the process. And one of the things that we were very intentional about was trying to do some of these conversations when it was still able to actually funnel into the budget. When we learned a lot of our budget study sessions in the late winter and spring, it was almost too late to really impact the budget significantly when things were already being formulated. So doing some of this in the fall, and we'll go over a timeline briefly as well, really helps vet these issues really early in the process so that we can really examine what it means on these priority areas and how we can really do this. And so, again, the goal, analyze pros and cons, positive implications, unintentional consequences of all the things that go into the priority areas that we set as a governing board. Next slide. And so here are the members that we approved during the May meeting. I think these descriptions just don't do this service to this great diversity of memberships that we have on this committee. We have parents on the committee. We have teachers, including the past president of the TEA. We have school administrators. We have leaders in our community, including a sitting city council member, a former state representative, and tribal leadership as well. And I think we have a really good group of individuals from different backgrounds and expertise and voices to bring to this committee as we try to vet some of these priority areas and see what's in the best interest of our district and community. Next slide. So here is the proposed timeline that we're looking into for the Budget Advisory Committee. So we're in the June-July period right now. In May, we already approved the membership of the committee, including myself as the board liaison to the committee. So either during this meeting, that's why the study action, if we're not ready tonight to approve priority areas, we can do that in July, but at some point this summer, approving strategic spending priority areas for the district that the BAC will be able to review during the fall. Sometime in July and August, the BAC members will receive school finance training from Renee Weatherless and the team. So they'll be, for those who don't have much experience with school finance, they'll be able to get caught up on some of the nuances and issues related to school finance. We hope there'll be an inaugural organizational meeting of the BAC in August, where we'll be able to introduce the members, do some open meeting laws training, set meeting times and places, set parameters for conversations and community input, and select a chair and the vice chair of this committee. Next slide. And so what we're asking for approval tonight or further discussion is the approval of 4 priority areas. What this proposal for the timeline does is have each priority area, each of the 4 priority areas being discussed twice. at 2 different meetings, and each of the 4 priority areas having a Part A discussion and a Part B discussion. So for example, during the September back meeting, in the 1-hour meeting that we would have then, or a shorter meeting, because we will have 1 priority area, Part A, we'll discuss the background on the first priority area information district already has and it has prepared for the first priority area. We'll be able to receive community input about the priority area through a call to the audience. The back can discuss the priority area, their thoughts, opinions, brainstorm implications, and then ask important questions, including what additional information is needed to help understand this first priority area and its implications. And so we won't have all the information at first meeting, but it'll be a chance to really brainstorm what information is needed for us to understand the issue even in more depth and answer questions in the time frame between the 2 meetings. And so go to the next slide. We'll see the October meeting will take that first priority area again in the Part B discussion. We'll review community feedback and comments between meetings. We'll have a forum for comments to be received about the topic. Review staff and other information gathered to answer questions to better understand the topic. So the questions that were asked in that priority area, what does this mean, or what is it going to imply for the district, and get all that information. They'll give about a month for the staff to gather that information to be able to present back to the back at the second Part B part of that discussion of the priority area. And then discuss the priority area again as a back, including a summary of the implications and recommendations for the board to consider. That'll happen in the Part B discussion, the first half of the October meeting, and then the second half of the October meeting, we'll do the Part A discussion of the second priority area. So again, introducing the topic, what is the issue, what are the unanswered questions, getting some community feedback early on through call to the audience, and then going to the next slide. During the subsequent meetings, each meeting would have the previous topic, Part B, and then the new topic, Part A, for the November-December meetings. And then finally in January, have the 4th priority area, the Part B discussion, and then a discussion of the final summary of recommendations to the board. And so that's why we're proposing 4 priority areas, so that they'll each have, each of the 4 priority areas will have 2 meetings that they're discussed, a Part A and a Part B, from September through to January. Any questions about kind of the timeline?
I have a question, Dr. Ravi. Thank you for the presentation. I wonder, I'm looking at the January meeting where we discussed priority 4, Part A and B, looks like, but I'm just wondering if perhaps, I know that we're going to be at that same meeting, they will be discussing all of the recommendations, but I wonder if there should be a separate meeting before the governing board reviews their suggestions to just go over each priority one more time to make sure nothing has changed or over that period of time.
That could definitely be incorporated into the calendar. I think that was part of the reason for that final, since the January meeting will only have the Part B of Priority 4, the second hour is still available. So that was going to be a time where they can review all the final summary of recommendations and any new information that comes up. And if there is, more information that's come up, they could always schedule another meeting before they present the final information or prepare the final information for board review.
Okay, thank you. Also, one more question. Is there any room for flexibility with this proposed schedule, in case something random comes up and we have to bring it to back to discuss it and find a solution?
Oh, 100%. There's, I think, always flexibility built into all of our committees and kind of the way the meetings run. This is kind of a best case scenario, and if things come up, if it's September and the board really needs some help on some other topic, we can always revise our priority areas and do things a little differently. But we're trying to and again, what we're not approving tonight is the schedule, is more the priority areas, which will be at the end of the presentation. And we'll see how we can best meet those priority areas. We might find out that it takes longer than an hour, and we might need to either spread this out longer or do something differently with this. But this is kind of a best case scenario proposal here tonight, and we'll kind of learn, since it's the first year of the BAC, we'll kind of learn a lot during this first year in terms of what's actually feasible and possible.
Thank you.
The next slide, it goes back to the board of directors in terms of the timeline. So the proposal in the timeline was that the February and March, the governing board reviews the 4 priority areas during its meetings, and then review the recommendation summaries from the BAC with the community input built into that. And so that will then come back to the board in February and March for our board study sessions for the budget that then we can then incorporate into the budget proposal like we did this year, so that we're not all making decisions in June, but we have some time in the springtime or winter and spring to make some decisions and set some of these priority areas and hopefully have some more well-informed decisions, having had months of community input and committee input, community and committee input into that process. Next slide. So in setting priority areas for our governing board, whether that happens tonight or we need more discussion that happens next month, I would recommend that we try to be very intentional and specific for our priority areas, balancing general topics with narrow topics, and be cognizant of topics that the BAC can actually review in a few hours, and the district staff can actually get some good relevant information about. So we don't want to be too esoteric, but making sure this is something that is not only a priority area, but something that we can actually accomplish in the course of this committee. So we don't want to set the committee up for failure. That's one of my concerns, in making sure that the topics we choose are actually doable, and if you know what I mean, and we don't set the committee up for failure here. And also, of course, topics with implications for success in our district is going to be very important for this committee to have relevance and be successful. And so because of open meeting laws, we haven't been able to talk as a group about this in between meetings, but our last slide here goes into some 4 potential priority areas. And this is based not, of course, on on conversations, because we couldn't do that, but really based on just what we've been hearing from this group during the actual meetings over the last few months. And some of the priority areas that we've been hearing, that myself have been hearing from this group, as well as our leadership team in the district. And so these are the 4 proposed priority areas, and we'll review them and see if we want to keep all 4 of these, update any of these, or replace these with any other priority areas that the board wishes to have instead of these. So the first priority area is a $15 minimum wage. And the question to answer is, how can TUSD sustainably move to a $15 minimum wage and appropriately address compression? So I think that's something that we've been talking about here as a group, and I'm glad we were able to move to a $13 minimum wage. And I understand, myself and I think most of this board really want to see a $15 minimum wage for this district, and we want to make sure we do that in a sustainable way, because it's going to be a permanent change, and we want to make sure we don't do our district more harm than good in terms of long-term budget implications. A second proposed priority area is the ESSER-funded positions. So the question to try to answer is, which positions proposed in ESSER are most likely to improve outcomes for students if kept beyond the 2 or 3 years? And how do we fund these positions from M&O and other sources of funding when ESSER funds expire? I am thrilled, like I think all 5 of us are thrilled about all this amazing, funding that we have to fund counselors and social workers and reading and math interventionists and all sorts of other positions. But you've heard my own concerns about, the long-term sustainability of these positions. And so really examining not just the budget implications, but actually the research and data out there. What of these positions are going to make the best and greatest long-term impact for teaching and learning and development of our students, and how do we fund this long term? Once the ESSER money runs out, what are the ways we can fund this from M&O, from DSEG, from title funds, and from other sources of funding we have, and really examine that issue succinctly. The third proposed area here is DSEG funds. Now that we are had the legal requirements removed, we have a lot more flexibility, or will in the years to come, in terms of levying funds and how to utilize those funds. So the question is, how can TUSD make use of the desegregation funds to reduce the student achievement gap, address administrative positions that are no longer required, and balance lowering property taxes for the community? And so since we have that control of levying funds, really examining the balance, we want to make sure we do right for our community in terms of the tax rates, but also do right for our students, and especially with achievement gaps and geographical and racial inequities that we know exist in the district. And then finally, the fourth priority area proposed is decreased classroom sizes, especially in the K-2 year, where we understand that there's the biggest, greatest long-term academic achievement issue. So the question, how can TUSD financially sustain long-term lowering of classroom sizes, especially for the youngest students to under 20, to best improve long-term academic achievement for our students? And again, there's a lot of good research and data about those early years in terms of lowering classroom sizes in that 18, 19 range, or trying to get under 20. And we see some sustained, long-term impacts, in those students' achievements and their development. And so that's the fourth priority area proposed, is how can we do that in a sustainable way and keep that long-term. So these are the four priority areas that we're proposing, and of course, none of this is in stone, and really looking forward to our conversation tonight in terms of what your thoughts are about these four priority areas, and which of these we want to keep, which of these want to modify in some way to formulate a question that's more useful for a budget advisory committee and the staff, of course, to prepare information for, or which of these want to replace with another idea that the board might have in replace of one of these, or more of these. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. This is very exciting, and I'm so grateful that you took this on with vision, and it seems to address a lot of the ongoing concerns and issues that I've had as a board member, and the frustration of feeling kind of behind the late to the game when it comes to budget priorities. So I think that this is just so well thought out, and I just am very, very appreciative for you for creating it and spearheading this. As far as the priority areas, I'd like to see what other board members have to say. I'm extremely interested in the decreasing of classroom size as probably my biggest priority in this my remaining time on the board. But I'd like to see what other board members would like to prioritize.
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. I definitely unite with all of these priority areas, but I would absolutely like to see the decrease in classroom size. And I know we're focusing on K through 3, I think that says. But I wonder if we should have a target also for middle school and high school. I'm looking at the proposed staffing formula, and I mean, I can't even imagine the 33 for high school is the cap size, and then middle school is 32. And so I wonder if we could propose to 28 or what everybody thinks about that. At least I know that they're going to focus mainly on K through 3, but if we should give them a projected target for middle school and high school cap sizes as well.
Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
Dr. Ravi, thank you so much for the presentation. This was very thorough. And I do also align with all, as Ms. Shaw just pointed out, all the priority areas. A couple questions. I looked at the timeline. I know that you all haven't really formally met yet, right? Is that my assumption? Okay. So you said did you yourself pick, or did you already talk to some of the board members about these priority areas?
So these four would be the four. So it's not like picking of these four. All these four could be the four priority areas. So isn't like picking our favorite of these four. Is tonight, if we do approve this, so these would be the four priority areas. So for example, P1 will be discussed in September and again in October. P2 will be discussed October, November, so on and so forth, up until January, where we'll discuss the fourth priority area, Part B. So if we adopt these four priority areas and set these as our four priority areas, all four of them will hopefully, as long as everything goes well with the back and we don't have any issues with trying to discuss these. Again, this is the first year, so we'll kind of have to play it by ear in terms of how this actually happens on the ground. But my hope is that all four of these, or whichever four that we select, would be the four that are discussed in a Part B and Part A, in Part B format from September through January.
Okay.
And then these will come back to us in February and March. So these four priority areas will come back to us in February and March with some recommendations. Some of the recommendations might be that, yeah, these ESSER funded positions, good luck trying to find $150 million, in 3 years to fund these, and we just need to, plan on these be temporary positions, or we might have a recommendation like, here are some sources of funding, we can keep these are the most evidence-based, options for our district, and these are the ones that we recommend as a group to keep and continue to try to fund after ESSER monies are gone, for example, or for the classroom size. The discussion, of the back might be, all right, this is the best available evidence. There isn't good evidence on these ages, but there's good evidence in this, and here's how we can afford this and where this will come from, and really find some implications, unintended consequences in terms of the budgeting issues, and then come back to us with a recommendation that we can run the review in February and March, and then hopefully drive the budget development for the next school year, in the 22-23 school year.
So, oh, sorry. Do you want to continue?
Oh, just one real brief.
Yes. Go
okay. I'm with all of these. I think they're all equally important. What I kind of tend to myself focusing on is the DSEG funds and seeing how we're going to best make use of that funding once we're able to really do it and be autonomous and being able to have the community help us make the decisions that's best for the district. So again, thank you for this work.
So Ms. Counts?
Oh, yes. Ms. Grijalva?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rawi. I think that these are all good priority areas. The one area I'd like to see expanded upon a little bit is the ESSER funded positions, because a lot of ESSER right now we're using as capital one-time investments. And I do think that it's really important for us to, as a district, look at our facilities and continued maintenance of our facilities, because we have to change our mindset as far as how we're competing with other districts. And, we have other districts that are building brand new facilities. We have charters that are doing that too. So we need to do what we can to invest in projects that are going to help, really showcase some of the amazing facilities that we have. And it's difficult to get people in the door when you have to go through, a bunch of chipping paint. And I just think it's important for us to really look at, it's difficult to get people to invest in like all of the great things we're doing in our classrooms if we can't get people to come and check out our schools, because, they're looking at facilities, sports facilities, science facilities. So I do think in some way we need to address some of that, but I don't have an issue with any of the other priorities.
That really leads me to my question, which is, if you have a big concern, so I'm going to bring up something that's a little bit controversial, but I think this is the place to do it. And I've discussed with Dr. Trujillo and some other community members about consolidation of our under-enrolled schools, and that money being reinvested into the schools, into the accepting schools that are accepting them. So if you have something like a big idea like that, like if we're going to continue, if we want to find this $150 million every year to be able to fund our schools the way that we're able to fund with these ESSER funds now, and only through, as I see it, as school consolidation, is that something that is like a one-off off of this, or can that be included into something like the ESSER funded positions or decreasing classroom size? I mean, how do you bring in these kind of big issues or big ideas or big proposals and tie it in? Can they be tied in to that, or is that going to just then dominate the...
Well, so the good news is if everything goes well, we'll hopefully be back here this time next year talking about priority areas for year 2 of BAC. And so we will also, be intentional, making sure that, this isn't too complicated for the BAC to be able to review, and, 2 hours, for each topic is, more or less. And, I do want to hesitate from making, from kind of going down a rabbit hole of other issues. But of course, we can always replace one of these with an issue of school consolidation or other things. And of course, as we talk about, ways to fund positions and some of the items here, and how to do that in a sustainable way, that could always come up as part of the conversation, whether that becomes a recommendation or not. But again, this is just the first year. If everything goes well, this is hopefully one of many years of having a budget advisory committee that's supporting the board and our district and our community. And if something comes up or there's other priority areas we want to add on, this is hopefully a multi-year process.
Yeah.
And Ms. Counts?
Yes, Ms. Greyhoffen.
Just to address consolidation and any idea of school closure, I do think that has to be a board vote and something that the board and staff have to work on, because there has to be a majority of us willing to do that before we even talk about it. I think it's important for us to look at how our consolidations and school closures, how that benefited the budget, how it hurt the budget in the long run. I heard repeatedly that these are funds that are going to continue to support us, every year. Show me where the line item is of the schools that are closed and the funding that we continue to reap. It just doesn't exist. Once it's incorporated into the general budget, that's it. You have the 1 year where you see a little bump, and then in our experience, and I think that, we can have finance give us more information on what it looked like year after year after the first initial year, and what, how many of those students continued to stay with our schools and how many we lost. So I think that's, the biggest issue is not so much maintaining the facility, it's, moving students into a classroom. But you mentioned, and I think rightly so, that when we're talking about increased class sizes, and that's essentially what we do when we consolidate schools. You make classes bigger. So in some of our schools right now, they have some amazingly small class sizes. Like their regular class load is 14 or 15. And if we were to consolidate schools, then those would be bumped up to 30. So people tend to make decisions based on a lot of different factors. And I just want to make sure that we learn from our own district's experience on this process.
Yeah, I didn't want to actually bring it because it's not an item on the agenda. I just wanted to kind of talk about it in the framework of the back. I think what would be a really big priority for me would be sustainable. Like if we could set what our ideal is, what our ideal district would look like. Including classroom sizes, including every school having a librarian and art teachers and fully equipped schools and classrooms and books and just this beautiful vision of what we would like to see TUSD be able to have. And then what is that? And then how do we get there? And what is that? And then how do we sustain that? So I think if there could be a priority, I don't know if that's too general, but some sort of priority of district budget vision, and then the action and the steps to get there and to sustain it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, just to kind of make sure there isn't any confusion, that no decisions being made by the back, right? It's just making recommendations, right. And all the decisions. There's no chucking of responsibility of the board of directors here with the budget advisory committees. It's making recommendations to come back to us as a governing board to then make the final decisions and then really then have good discussions next winter and spring. So there's no sense of this back making any decisions or us trying to defer any decision making to another body. Mm-hmm. This is really using some expertise and really giving some staff some good focus time to answer questions and address these issues as well. And so I'm looking forward to. And I like
the diversity and the broad range of the people on the committee because I think that it gives us an opportunity to hear stuff that maybe we are not hearing from the people that we're in a close association with. Mm-hmm. And some of these challenging issues. And so I am in total support of this. But my question is that too big of a priority item to have vision, what we want the district, the budget to be and what we want for every school, and then how do we sustain that?
try not to say yes.
Yeah.
I think having a specific question is really important for the
Yeah.
back. So again, I don't want to set the back up for failure with like two of a broad topic. And so we were trying to be intentional with these topics to try to make them succinct enough where they're somewhat broad, but also with a specific question, like how do we do this? How do we do that with a very specific issue? And I think, if we're like these topics for this time, and, as we go into year 2, we can definitely discuss some other topics. I think, some things that are not on this list that I'd love to see in future lists is the librarian issues, and physical books. We can always have school consolidation be an issue that the back looks at in year 2, if we decide not to put that into year 1 and keep the 4 priority areas here. And I think, and really seeing the output of the BAC over the next year, we'll have a better sense, this time next year, what can we actually accomplish from the back and what's appropriate. I think this is going to be a learning process, and I want to make sure we're concise enough with these questions, and we'll see how broad we can get.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions?
So, Ms. Counts?
I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
Ms. Shaw, go ahead and go.
Ms. Shaw.
It was me, sorry. Just real quick, Dr. Ravi, I was wondering if for the priority 4 detail, if we could also add in the social-emotional benefits of lowering the class size, not just academic achievement, but also social-emotional learning, and also to see if we can, as part of that question, see what the ideal class size for middle and high school students would be.
No, I think that's been a pretty consistent comment from this group, and I think we can definitely modify priority area 4, Ms. Weatherless and staff, to include some of this feedback. So what I'm hearing is not just to focus on K2 or K3, but to be a little more broad. And I think it just says especially in here, but I think just making sure it's as obvious to the BAC and to staff that we're looking for more broad research in terms of classroom sizes and what are some ideal classroom sizes for long-term improvements, both academically as well as for the social-emotional development of our students.
Great.
Yes, Council.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Luna Rose.
So what is our next steps? Is this still a study item?
This is a study action tonight. So if the board is ready to move forward, I haven't heard any proposals or things we want to take off this list to replace. So what I'm hearing from this group is the 4 with the modification of the last one that we just mentioned. And if the board is ready to approve this, then we can approve this tonight as a study action. If the board isn't ready to approve tonight, then we can think about it some more and defer a decision and vote in July. So it was really based on what the board is ready to do tonight.
Oh, I'm ready to move.
I'll second. Okay, Ms. Luna Rose moved the item and I seconded. Any other comments, questions before we vote? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, item passes unanimously. And thank you again, Dr. Ravi and Ms. Weatherless and Dr. Trujillo and everybody on the committee that worked. I think this is super exciting. And really going to give us a good, healthy perspective on where we need to, with some guidance, some advice. That'd be great.
Well, thank you, Ms. Weatherless and the finance team and Dr. Trujillo for all the support on this. I think we've had some great ideas and some good conversations over these last few months, and I'm really thankful for the governing board to get to the point where we're ready to approve priority areas and really hopefully come back to us, next spring with some good ideas and some thoughts and good community input as well. So for the community who are watching tonight, please pay attention to what's happening from the Budget Advisory Committee. We're looking for input with a call to the audience and hopefully some comments between meetings. And for any Budget Advisory Committee members watching tonight, I'm really looking forward to working with you in this year ahead. I think we're going to do some great work for the district and our students.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Dr. Trujillo, we are on item 9.1, which is the last item of the night, the expenditure update.
Yes, I'd like to welcome back our Director for Finance, Renee Weatherless, for the expenditure update for May.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, President Counts, members of the Governing Board, Council Ross, and staff. So I am here tonight to bring the last of the monthly expenditure updates for this fiscal year with the close of the month of May. The next time we'll be presenting on fiscal 21 will be later on in October when we bring the annual financial report. So next slide. We've been tracking all of our funding sources all year long. You have seen this every single month. As we start closing out open POs, paying all of our invoices for the current year, we will close in on what our actual carry forward balances will be. At the M&O number, you'll see that that is $14 million. When we get to the next slide, you'll see that that contains some DSEG and just regular M&O. And all of our federal grants will get trued up, and we will roll over what our actual fund balances are when we present the annual financial report. Next slide, please. So that $14 million, you can see that the top portion shows that some of that money, about $3 million of it, is sitting under DSEG. DSEG funds do not roll over. That's not an option. They just do not. And so the numbers that you've seen earlier in the proposed budget, we're working off of the non-DSEG numbers, the capital and the M&O. Next slide, please. So this report just continues to give you a snapshot of all of the expenditures of the district year to date. So this is through the month of May, just broken out by the different types of salary as well as the funding source. So this is just something that we track along the way. In the far right column, you can see the percent of expenditure. So just between salaries and benefits alone, that does represent over 70% of all of our expenditures across all of our funding sources. So that's something that is important information as we look across all district expenditures. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the projected fund balance. We've been tracking, if you go back and look at prior month, you saw some red numbers on here, one being in community schools, the other actually being in food service. So with the continuation of our meal programs and sustaining all of our staffing throughout this fiscal year, we were anticipating some losses in those revenue departments. We are seeing some uptick in food service with the return to in-person instruction, and so we will continue to monitor the food service fund all the way through the close of the year to see if we do indeed incur a loss. If we do not, then great, we don't need to dip into any of those ESSER funds that we had been kind of earmarking to cover those losses. On the other side, with community schools, we are anticipating some losses there just to sustain staff, and so we'll be reporting that in the close of the year. Everything else has been staying pretty steady that you've been seeing every single month. Next slide, we go into the classroom spending. So going off to the right, we're looking at the third column from the right-hand side, our year-to-date expenditures. So these are actual bills being paid through the month of May. And you will see that thus far, our instructional percentage is 54.5, which is great because we talked about in the proposed budget that we want to keep increasing our spending in the classroom. And if you just look across that line, you'll see back in fiscal 15, we were below 50%, only at 48.7. And each year we are continuing to steadily climb. I do include what the remaining encumbrances look like because, you don't want to get excited yet because the year is not closed. We might have some timing variances, but I will say at this point, I'm pretty comfortable and confident that when you look at the subtotal of instruction, student support, and instructional support, we're sitting at 71.8% right now. That's unprecedented. So when you start including all of those dollars that are really affecting students, that's something that we should be proud of. At the same time, we're managing our fixed costs in operations and food service, transportation, as well as our administrative costs. So again, this is just a projection through May, and we'll be bringing back the final in October. The next slide is just the summary of what those historical percentages have looked like since we started tracking classroom spending, and you can see where we're heading back up to. I believe our peak of instructional spending was back in 05 at 55.4. And then the final slide here is for the public, just to understand what kinds of expenditures go into each one of those categories, what falls under instruction, student support, and instruction support. These three are combined, those numbers that we want to really take a look at versus the rest of our operational costs and admin, transportation, food service, etc. So I believe that concludes my report. And as always, there's an attached expenditure report that gives you all of the detail behind all of those charts and numbers that we provided. So do you have any questions for me?
Board member questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Weatherless. All right. Dr. Trujillo, last one is future meeting dates and agenda items.
We have no future meeting dates to propose or agenda items.
All right. A wonderful job, team. We're out before 8:30, so everybody have a great night, and meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.